Hi, I'm Joe Polizzi, and this is the Content Inc. podcast. 5 minutes every Monday for content creators who desire to be content entrepreneurs. A few weeks ago on the This Old Marketing podcast, Robert and I had a discussion about Prof G, Scott Galloway's strategy for his podcast, where he's adding in different types of episodes inside the one podcast feed. So he's adding episodes about markets. He added his office hours episodes already, and then he also added a read of his newsletter, No Mercy, No Malice, as well. So what I'm looking at right now, he has 4 episodes a week, and it might go to 7. I don't know if this is good or bad, but it seems like he's got a following over each of these. People like the diversity, and they don't necessarily need to open each one. But what's different about this is he doesn't have to create a new podcast container for each one of these like we used to in the past. So for example, we've got this Content Inc. podcast. We've got This Old Marketing. Maybe if we would have rethought that, we could have put Content Inc. inside of This Old Marketing, instead of creating something that's brand new and have to build a brand new audience for somebody to subscribe to. Again, I'm no expert on podcast strategies here, but I'm really starting to look at this. I think that this has a couple of different implications for content entrepreneurs and podcasters to think about. First of all, your own podcast, what can you do with it? So let's say you have a podcast feed. So let's take a look at this one, Content Inc. Let's say I wanted to add a podcast on Web3 for content creators. Well, I could go ahead and add that, another feed, do the artwork, get a new account at Libsyn, do the whole thing, and tell people from this that you need to go subscribe to that other one. Or I could take that and say, well, I've got the Content Inc. 5-minute on Monday, and I'm going to do Web3 for content creators on Wednesday. That might not even be me. It might be somebody else. It might be a partnership with another person, another organization. So now I've got 2 different podcast episodes inside of this container. Well, I literally have 5 additional days that I could do things on if I could or if I should. Now, does this create burnout from the subscriber? I'm not sure. Because I look at my own behavior, I just look for the podcast episodes that I want to pay attention to anyways. And if there's a 1 or 2 in between that I don't want, I just go ahead and ignore it. So here's another thought. Not only for your own podcast, but let's say that you want to launch your podcast and you haven't yet. You could go to a current podcast that's already popular, that already has the audience you want, and say, hey, can I take your Tuesdays with this concept? And I'll create it, I'll promote it, and we can do this kind of revenue share, or create whatever the incentive is that you want, whatever you're going for. Maybe it's just notoriety and you might do it for free, or maybe you want to get paid and you're going out to a advertiser or a sponsor and you want them to pay you to do it. I don't know what the scenario is, but I really think there's some new ways to look at doing a podcast and not having to do it the same way everybody else does it, but say, hey, there's all kinds of content out there. How can we get the right audience as quickly as possible and get this thing as close to monetization as we possibly can? I don't think it's creating something fresh. I think you either lean on something you already have with your current container and put it into a different day of the week, or you go out to somebody else that's already doing a podcast that's targeting your audience and go to them and create a partnership. So it's just something I've been thinking about. Don't be surprised if we start to experiment with some of this stuff. I'm really infatuated by what Scott Galloway's doing. I think he's on to something. Do I think it's perfect? Do I think that it satisfies all the requirements and check boxes? No, but I think there's an opportunity to test it out and try it and to see if it's something for us. And in turn, it might be something for you. Good luck. Hi, this is Joe. First of all, thanks again for listening to the Content Inc. podcast. At the Tilt, we're really trying to get more people to listen to this podcast as well as our This Old Marketing podcast, and reviews really, really help. So we love a review of the Content Inc. podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you do, I will send you $20 in Tiltcoin, and all you have to do is just email us by going to contentinc.io with a link to your review, and I'll shoot the $20 straight off to you. Thanks again for all your support.